I don't think it was necessary or anything. I still think that's a nice gesture regardless. But he uses the word rhetoric here. And that again makes it sound like these videos were coming from like a legitimate racist, which I don't think they were. I really don't. At least I don't want to believe that iDubbbz used to be a racist and he was using that to try and...
All right, okay. Let's quickly break this down, okay? Because this is something that it's still getting on my fucking nerves. Let's say there are two white people standing here and here, right? On either of my sides. I'm over here chilling on my phone, doing whatever I'm doing, right? Over here, this dude, who's not an intentional racist, says, right? And this person over here, who is an intentional racist, says, right? They're both saying it for shock. They're both saying it to shock someone, right? How the fuck am I going to know the difference between the two? Seriously, how the fuck am I supposed to know the difference between the two? And why do I need to know the difference between the two to say that I don't like that word because it's a racial slur? Like, why is it always up to me to stomach the racial slur? Why? Why? Seriously, why? Why do I have to stomach the racial slur? And why is the racial slur never just racist? You may think that the intentional racist is the only person who deserves to actually apologize or some shit. But if you're saying something that I'm recognizing as racism, why is it not okay for me to say, hey, you're being racist and I don't like that? And here's the thing that really drives me crazy about a lot of this shit, right? Why should I stick around to find out whether or not he actually means it or not? Why? Like, seriously, why? Why? And why is it unfair and unreasonable for me to say, hey, this white dude saying the N-word probably is a racist? Why? There's this thing that a lot of white folks do where they're going to say something really racist in public, but then they're going to say, but I didn't actually mean it in a racist way. And then I'm supposed to sit there and listen to the reason why and actually accept that the reason isn't racist when the punchline is racism. I understand that to a lot of white people, the N-word is just a word and they're saying it because it's shocking and they've been told not to say it. I get that that's the appeal. And I get that when that's your way of looking at it, you may not think of it as racism, right? But what you're actually doing is expressing racism for shock. Therefore, you're expressing racism. I don't understand why it's that complicated to some people. I really don't get it. Why is it that complicated? It's not unfair to assume that a person who uses slurs with no shame probably is a bigot. And I find it so fascinating that people expect for us to suspend this disbelief of white men that somehow, if they say the N-word, we have to make sure that they mean it in a not racist way.
You can explain, I just don't like making that content anymore, so I won't. And be like, hey, I even regret making that content because it's cringe now. That's all fine, but to think that it is this huge, massive problem, like you made an unforgivable mistake, is a little weird to me.
Obviously, for Charlie, it's not that big of a deal. He's not somebody who's ever going to be attacked by those slurs, right? He's not somebody who's ever going to really deal with the way that those slurs have been used to dehumanize. And I want to talk about that too. I think a lot of people don't get dehumanization in this conversation, right? Words like that are usually used in order to justify why somebody doesn't deserve rights. That's usually the function of the term. You're not a person, you're not a human being that's deserving of all the rights and freedoms that I have. You're a this, you're a, and that's why they're used. I feel that the strangest thing in this conversation is these slurs are like abstracted from their original meaning. Hearing him talk about this, in fact, I feel like for a lot of people, the N-word is this forbidden word. They almost extract it away from its racist history. For them, it's just a no-no word that they've been told they can't say. And it's a lot more than that, obviously. The N-word is indeed a lot more than that.
I was edgy, and now I think it's cringy, so I don't want to do that anymore, and we're closing the book. That we're shutting that chapter down, putting the kibosh on it. Now we're doing some other stuff. And that would have been a totally fine explanation. A lot of people would have still would have been disappointed, of course, in his audience that liked that content. But at the end of the day, you shouldn't feel like a prisoner to your audience.
Okay. What is so wrong with him calling it racist? Why? I find, let's really unpack this. So I understand to some degree why someone like Charlie is confused, because his understanding of racism is that it's intentional, right? Racism is this intentional act that you do deliberately because your goal is to dehumanize a person of color, right? What a lot of people don't get is that we live in a world that has history. And one of the points I tried to make in the previous video is that our history has made it so that certain isms are normalized, right? And the idea that Black people are inherently inferior has indeed been normalized. I remember when I used to have debates with people about the N-word when I was living in my little conservative town. And one of the common conversations that I would get into is that the N-word is not a slur against Black people. Oh no, it simply means ignorant. I remember I would get into so many of these conversations with people about this so many different times. And it was always like, we are only going to use this word to refer to ignorant people. And if you respond or react to this, you're just saying that you're ignorant, right? There's always this idea that as Black people, we need to just suck it up, get over it, endure, swallow our pride, and take it in stride, right? And I find that to be really frustrating because that sort of mentality does indeed ignore that racism is a tangible, real, and impactful thing. And I think that people like Charlie think that because they're not wearing white hoods or something and saying the N-word, then somehow it's not racist, or it's not intentionally racist, or it's not deliberately, meanfully racist. But the thing about it is, if we didn't live in a country that had a history of anti-Blackness, that would not be a word that you would reach for, right? The word that you're using is only shocking because of its history, right? It wouldn't be shocking if racism was not a thing. You really can't extract that word from its history. I understand why you may want to, but that doesn't actually mean you're going to be able to. I can see how a white person who doesn't think that they're racist may think that them using the N-word is not a violent expression of racism. But because of its history, it is. And so it doesn't actually matter if he didn't intend for it to be racist or he didn't mean for it to be racist. It was racist.
I have no doubt there really were some dangerous weirdos that did hold dangerous beliefs in his community, but I don't think he made them. I think they were there when they found his content to begin with, and they stuck around because they just liked hearing the edgy words spoken out loud. That's it. I don't think he made them. He wasn't the Frankenstein to their monster.
It's not even about him making them. It's not even about that. It's about him providing a space for them. Like I said, these kids walked up to him and said the N-word. And they walked up to him saying the N-word, expecting for him to be okay. Aw, Pepper came back. Look at her get the water. They walked up to him expecting that he would be okay with the N-word. So like, obviously, they felt safe around him. And I think that the thing that's so weird to me about is it intentional racism or is it just being said for shock humor, is that you're still fostering this environment where racial slurs are being used, right? You're still fostering this environment where it's okay to be racist, right? Again, I totally accept that there's white people who view the N-word as not really a word about dehumanizing Black people, but isn't that such an example of just the degree in which it's been used, right? Like the fact that you're even able to see it as a word that isn't really about dehumanizing Black people, I think really shows you just how successful it's been at dehumanizing Black people, right? That it's no longer about that it supersedes that. Now it's just a word synonymous with shock. I know that there's this insinuation that like extracting the word from racism is going to make it less racist, but for it to become so synonymous with the most shocking and upsetting thing for you to say, for that to also be the word used to dehumanize Black folks, is actually quite an indictment of the phrase. Anyway.